righty. Let's talk food marketing and how terrible it is. Ready to roll?
Let's do it.
All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Silver Bullet Podcast. James and Colton sitting here. And like I just mentioned, we are going to dedicate this podcast to talking about food marketing specifically. And there's a lot of, per usual with everything we talk about, there's a lot of different avenues that we could go down. But we're going to specifically talk about how misleading it is.
Mm-hmm.
And this can go anywhere from the actual advertising that you see on TV to the cultural acceptance of, well, if it's gluten-free, it must be good, or anything. Nutrition labels, we can kind of go wherever we want. So I don't know, where do you want to start? Where do you want to dive into
we should kind of like have an overview or a briefing of why we want to discuss this. You work a lot with one-on-one nutrition clients.
Yeah.
I'm bringing in right now. I have 11 of our newer members, health coaching clients, and not every single one of them, but even newer prospects coming in. Some of the questions that they have, just the assumptions that we take on or that we are kind of conditioned to believe because of advertising and marketing and how individuals communicate. We associate meanings to certain foods. We give it a new definition, in a sense.
Right.
And then the problem that I see all the time, and we used to even lecture about this, is that you can create I'm going to make a healthy paleo cookie. All right, that's cool. But like when we identify a word like healthy with a cookie, then we assume that we can now eat more of it
because it's healthy.
Right, and now we're just making things even worse. Yeah. Like you'd probably be better off just to eat the regular cookie and be done.
And move on. Yeah, I knew you had some stuff you wanted to get to that. So obviously, humans are very emotional beings. Okay, everything that we do is essentially driven by emotion. So we got drove by. Anyway, so everything is driven by emotion usually. So when people say I don't make emotional decisions, that's wrong. Your emotion just might not be as dramatic as what others are. But like you're going to weigh pros and cons, kind of. In your head, and subconsciously this is all going to happen and you don't even realize it, but we're emotional creatures, so usually advertising takes to cater to that. They how do I make this product here look like something that will make a consumer make an emotional decision either to buy or purchase or experience this.
Right.
And there's a documentary on Netflix, and the name of it is escaping me right now. Sustainable is what it's called, and they were talking about sustainable farming. It's a very interesting and very enlightening documentary. My gosh, my brain is everywhere. Documentary, but there is a section in there where they talk about the term local goods or local produce or anything like that. Like what is local? And so they kind of go into a lot of food labeling and how the labeling industry and how marketing has really tipped the scale in how to produce all these mass goods that aren't really local, and they're not really what they say they are. They're just taking advantage of your lack of education.
Right.
Okay. That was the big note that I had. Whether you want to believe it or not, when you have a product to sell, whatever that product is, you're going to make someone believe that they need it, regardless if they do or if they don't. Right. And you'll do anything in your power to make sure that happens. Right. Food marketing is no different. As a matter of fact, it's worse. They will spend. I read somewhere that Coca-Cola spends more money on. Is that your stomach? Man, I heard that Coca-Cola will spend more money on advertisement for the Super Bowl than some Fortune 500 companies will spend on their essentially entire employee.
That's good.
Just think about that for a second. That's how much money. It's in the billions,
right.
Multi-billions in advertisement.
Yeah.
And that's how they get you to to make decisions. They keep flashing it in front of your face. You see it on TV, you hear about it on the radio, you see it on billboards. You're always going to have that stimulation to say, hey, this needs to be something that you have, right? And it's always evolving. It's always changing. The algorithms for how they go about marketing are always changing. A perfect example of this, think back about 10 years ago. Think of every fast food chain you've ever heard of. I'm talking all the big ones, McDonald's, Taco Bell, Arby's, Burger King, all that. Think about their signage. It was on the tallest pole that it could fit on. You're talking 30, 40 feet plus up in the air. They wanted it high above everything because that is where they wanted you to look. Now think of the new ones now. Have you ever been to a city and seen what they look like now? They're all like less than 10 feet. It's the new marketing strategy they have for restaurants to help get signage out because more people are doing this. Did you know
That's
that?
funny.
See that? I seriously read that somewhere. Right here. Cell phone. I know you guys can't see this out in podcast land, but I'm looking at my cell phone. Imagine what you're doing when you're driving.
Right.
Your line of vision
hopefully
is...
you're not doing that when you're driving.
Yeah. Well, even as a passenger, your line of driving from looking at your phone is like up and down only a couple inches. You're not actually looking up at like the skyline. So this is a perfect example of how they like change their marketing through years of different research and what are the people quote unquote biting now, right? And so you'll see it change. And if you pay attention to one specific product, that's why it continually changes.
Yeah.
Sometimes the logo changes. Sometimes the catchphrase changes.
Right.
But anyways, just know before we get into this nitty gritty that we're being taken advantage of in that realm. The marketing of food is specifically designed to make us make emotional decisions.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we shared in the mission that, I mean, honestly, we want to get individuals off of, if not all, but most processed food. There's no place for it in the pursuit of optimal health. It's expensive, and a lot of times what is labeled with it, you're not going to achieve that specific thing. It's just all of the keywords and the AdWords to go along with it. Gluten-free, and then you look at the ingredient list, and there's 52 things listed in the actual product. So it's making sense of all of those things and understanding, like, just because there are those words associated with the thing, it doesn't mean that it's now beneficial to consume, especially on a regular basis. Yeah.
So I think one of the directions I want to go with this, and you and I talked about it a little bit before we got on the podcast, was that, you mentioned that they have, words and catchphrases and things like that to kind of, it used to be a couple years ago that the best-selling phrase that you could put on a product was all natural. If it's all natural, that was when it was just now starting to kind of creep into like the organic material of things, and like people were like, this, okay, so it's good, so therefore it's good for me, right?
And colors too.
Colors, yeah. That's right. So, the all natural thing was big. Nowadays, it can go all the way up to, grass-fed was a big one. You know what I mean? But
grass-fed, organic, pastured.
Yeah, that's the big one, pastured. Right. And so, like, things like that can really start to take off. But words are obviously, they have their own meaning, and for something to be labeled organic, if you do enough research in it, it's pretty pathetic in most areas. It very well may or may not be organic. It's just one of those things that it's so hard to really look down the rabbit hole. All it is somebody checking boxes, right. Not necessarily verified. But, you should always, try to have as much confidence. Buy local when you can, so that way you know where it came from. But regardless, words mean things, but it doesn't mean that you can lump a bunch of them together to make it mean what you want. What I mean by that, you hinted at it at the very beginning, the whole dessert thing. Right. So if something's gluten-free was one of the biggest catchphrases about 3-4 years ago. If somebody came up to me and said, I'm on a gluten-free diet, okay, that's cool. Did you know Twizzler's gluten-free? That's what it is. Yeah. And here's the thing. There are people that took advantage of that. companies that took advantage of that. Quaker Oats took advantage of that.
Oh, my.
They put on their oatmeal that it was gluten-free. Guess what? There's no gluten in oatmeal.
Right.
But guess what? That marketing phrase was so sought after for a long time. I bet their sales went up.
Yeah.
So it's just getting what we're getting to, is that we are being taken advantage of from our lack of education about food.
Yeah.
In order to make emotional.
Yeah.
You would agree that's an emotional purchase, right?
The relationship with food is the biggest thing that has to, there has to be a lot of emphasis and focus on that for everybody. Usually a diet, or individuals will search a diet that allows them to consume the things that they want to consume on a regular basis. Unless you work with a coach one-on-one, and they're going to tell you no. At least they're going to try to tell you no.
Yeah.
I've worked with individuals, and they're like, yeah, well, I do keto, and they'll, they're going through and getting cheeseburgers with bacon and cheese and no bun and no vegetables, and I'm like, that's not
grease.
Good. It is keto, it fits the definition, but it's not going to help you reach your goals.
Well, I would argue that a little bit, but regardless, I know exactly what you're getting at. Yeah, there are too many people that know that there's something that they have as a vice they're not willing to give up, so I will find the quote-unquote diet or the trend that will support me to continue eating this as long as it means that I'm still dieting, or there's still a possibility that I could do it. Dairy is one of the big ones for a lot of people, and people are like, I'm not going to give up cheese. I'm not going to give up milk. I'm not going to give up any of that other stuff. Look, I get it. It's good. Don't get me wrong. But for most people who hold on to excess body fat and have high levels of inflammation, you got to get off of it.
Yep.
And to do keto for the sake of being able to eat a block of cheese a day is the wrong way to go about it.
Yeah.
Here's the thing about keto, and it's not something that I get down a rabbit hole with a lot of people, because it is a complex subject when you're talking about fats, okay? And here's the thing that a lot of people don't understand. There are 3 different types of fat that you consume, something broken down into omegas: omega-3s, omega-6s, and omega-9s. And these are 3 main ones that you consume. And the typical ratio, let me step back. The optimal ratio of omega-6s and 9s to omega-3s should be somewhere around 3-to-1. Okay, now to put more context into this, omega-6s and omega-9s are inflammatory markers, inflammatory agent, things that will help promote inflammation. So that way, when you cut yourself, inflammation goes to the site and it clots. That is a good thing. Omega-3s are the opposite. They are the anti-inflammatory. This is the fish oil stuff that you always hear about. So you need both, a little of both. But the standard American diet, from what we read, and we talked about this on a podcast before. I know I covered this.
2007, I think.
I remember talking about this in my nutrition course that I had with the beginning of the year. It's somewhere like 25-to-1 as far as 25 of the 6s and 9s to 1 of the omega-3s.
Yep.
So knowing that you have that much inflammation in the fat that we tend to consume, if you're doing a keto diet and your way to go about this is just, like you said, hitting the drive-through cheeseburger without the bun and doing stuff in that way, the only thing that you're going to do is turn yourself into a ball of inflammation.
Yeah.
You might lose a couple pounds, but I guarantee you, if you ever hop off, it's going right back.
Right.
Guaranteed.
Right. And I think we should mention, everyone in the pursuit of health and the pursuit of fitness, you're working with individuals. This is why we focus a lot more on one-on-one coaching, because it's more effective.
Now.
Yeah.
You've learned that.
Especially working with food. If an individual's coming to you and their diet is heavily, fast food, processed, junk, and they're just begging with you to be able to feel a little bit better. And they're like, so if I get if I go through such and such and get a salad, is that better than that's a victory. You're thinking now in terms of better choices. Is that exactly what I want you to eat? Absolutely not. But I'm going to work with that, and I'm going to continue to tweak it and develop it. Now, after you've learned this information for 3 or 4 years, if you're still making those same decisions, I don't know how much we can help you out.
There's definitely a will that needs to be pushing you to help make the next best choice. But we've talked about that before. And that'd be a tremendous victory. I had a tremendous victory with one of my clients not too long ago, and the biggest victory of that was eliminating processed food, eliminating some of the things that we knew were going to be bad. But it took enough push to say that, look, what you want will not happen.
Right.
Okay, it will not happen. It will not achieve the first goal that you had, the secondary goal, or the tertiary goal that you set. None of these will happen.
Yeah.
And sometimes you need that charge in order to help make the best decisions. But for somebody that maybe was, a drive-through connoisseur to be, maybe I'm still the drive-through 3 times a week, but this time instead of getting the chicken sandwich, I'm getting salad with whatever on it. Like that is a victory. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
But like you said, if you're a year removed from that time and you're still in the drive-thru eating chicken salads,
I haven't learned much.
We haven't learned much.
Yeah.
Okay. So obviously, it is one thing to choose a diet that lends itself to the things that you want, but it's a completely another one to choose a diet that's meant to give you the result that you're after, right? And this is where obviously one-on-one coaching can be very beneficial. I have 7 or 8 one-on-one clients I work with right now in a given week. And none of them are doing the same thing. Not one of them is doing the same thing. So it is very important, and it brings up a good point. So what else about marketing, or what else about food?
I think just like to kind of tie in what I was talking about a second ago, if you're the individual that always goes to a family gathering and you bring a pie and a cake and whatever, and they're, if you buy them at the store, it's full of a bunch of junk, and instead you've decided that I'm going to make these things on my own now, and you use all of these things from scratch, and they're all natural ingredients and everything, and you still bring a pie and a cake. Okay, they may offer more nutrients. They may, in fact, be more wholesome to the body.
Less inflammatory.
Right. So I'm not arguing that it's a better or worse. I mean, it is a better decision. Like, there's a valid point in that. But it's still dessert.
Yeah. So we'll kind of stay on the dessert wagon here for a minute. This is where
we just see this issue a lot.
Yeah, 100%. Don't get me wrong. You're a dessert guy. You like dessert.
I love ice cream.
Okay, and
not so much anything else. Just give me some ice cream all the time.
But when you eat ice cream, what do you eat? You eat ice cream.
I would prefer that over homemade ice cream every time. I'm just being honest.
Yes. All right. Here's the deal. I don't have a sweet tooth, so I'm not a sympathetic person when it comes to sweets. I'm not.
He thinks it's funny.
It's hilarious. I'm like, y'all can't figure it out. Anyways, so
I don't want to figure it out.
Here's the thing. But when you have your little conniption fits where you're like, I need ice cream,
right,
you go and eat ice cream.
Yeah.
You don't go try to make your own coconut milk, organic this and that ice cream. It's just you hit it and it's gone.
Yeah. And I went through that season because, again, I wanted to eat ice cream. So I'm like, well, if we make this on our own and we put good stuff in it and we have it more often, it's better for us. Well, then we just eat more of it and it's not better for us.
So that's what I'm getting at. So here is the deal. Dessert is one of those things that I don't even really understand how it ever came about. I don't care to know. I just know it exists and I'm going to deal with it. But we all know that dessert by nature, regardless of what it entails, has the lower amount of nutrient possibility across all meals that we consume in a given day.
There you go.
Correct?
Yeah.
Has the lowest quality / quantity more than likely. Like, I don't know of a dessert that is a healthier alternative to my
ribeye steak.
Yeah, to my lean protein vegetable, whatever.
I'm not putting protein in my Haagen-Dazs either.
So here's the thing: when we look at these ulterior ways to make these desserts, I think one of the big ones that everybody used to make, and it kind of died off now, was the protein balls. They're like, I'm going to make these protein balls. And guess what? It has protein in it. I'm like, that's great. What else does it have? Well, it has honey. It has flaxseed. It has semi-sweet chocolate chips. It has some coconut flakes. Oh, some agave nectar. Threw some dates in there. Before you know it all, you have a little ball this size that's 300 calories.
Yep.
Right? And it's almost pure carbs. And that one scoop of protein powder you put in to make 30 of them doesn't amount to much per serving.
Yeah.
So when we look at the fact that, okay, all the ingredients I'm going to use to make this healthy cake, I'm using my almond flour, I'm using coconut milk, I'm using all of the things that I know and that I have been taught are a better option for this food. the fact still remains that that thing that you created is a dense carbohydrate mess.
Yeah.
And for most individuals, you don't need carbohydrates to the extent that you think you do.
Yeah. So that's a great point. If I were to make that, and if I were to give it to anyone, if I have a younger athlete or an individual competing, or we have a client that comes in and they're like, I need to gain weight, those are perfect.
Great.
Let's have some of those things, but we're not calling it a healthy snack ball.
No, it's not. It is a loaded carbohydrate.
Full of calories.
It's full of calories. It's almost impossible to track too. And I still think if you ever want to achieve anything as far as the scale moving or body fat going down or muscle mass going up, you have to track your food. And if you can't track your food, you don't have an accurate understanding of what you're essentially putting in, and you're just going to sit here and yo-yo. Might not be by much, but you're probably going to have a really hard time seeing changes. So the fact that these food ingredients tell us that they're good, there's this and that, it doesn't take away from the fact that it's still dessert.
Right.
And that's the biggest problem that we have with things, because this is what we see a lot of people do, and I've seen it on food logs.
Yeah.
People will eat really well. And there's a lot of different ways. Sorry to tangent. There's a lot of different ways to look at food logs. When you have a week at a time, you can obviously look at the calorie intake. You can look at the macronutrient ratio over a given day. I like to look at the entire week in a row, and I want to see each and every meal that you have, and I want to see the calorie amount. And I'm going to sit here and make these little up and down notes and figure out, okay, well, this meal you had 200, this meal you had 700, this meal you had 400, this one you had 500, and see this up and down trend. And it never fails. I'll be looking at a food log, and I'm looking at carbs and protein, and they're all staying consistent, and all of a sudden the protein drops and the carbs shoot up, but guess what? The total calories on the day never changed. And I'm like, what happened here? And they're like, I made this awesome cake. It's completely healthy though. Okay. You completely fell off the wagon as far as your protein requirements for that day, and that is going to essentially cause a problem probably tomorrow and then the day following. Yeah. And it did. But it's not just this interchangeable thing that you can just substitute in for everything that you do. If you're somebody who's ever been told that you have specific carbohydrates you need to remove, that's good. Remove them. But that doesn't necessarily mean that if you have carbohydrates to enjoy, that they should be enjoyed from a dessert.
Right. Yeah. Well, I just the longer that I coach, the more that I do this, the more I think I have an appreciation for the individuals who are just completely confident with where they are. They're good with what they do, and they just want to continue to do what they want to do. Like I'm very appreciative of that mindset, because I think culturally, especially with dessert, we all say we want specific things, but then when it comes to decision making, we don't do the things that allow us to reach the thing that it is that we say. I'm all about the individual that's like, you know what? I love to lift 3 or 4 times a week, and I am going to have ice cream every single Friday, and I don't want to do nutrition coaching once a week because I want to have my ice cream once a week. But like I can understand and I resonate with that, because that person they know what they want. Clear and
conscious decision.
Right.
I think the biggest thing the biggest hurdle people have to get over, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't make these paleo desserts with all the great ingredients. I think if you're going to do something like that, I think it's great. The problem is if you find yourself consuming more and more and more in different areas, just because it's healthy, I think that you're on the wrong path.
Right.
I think you'd be better off to say that, look, it's Friday night. There's a great chance that wherever I'm going to go, we're going to end up having dessert or something sweet. I'm just going to essentially take my lashing, so to speak, have that piece, and I'm done. I move on. I'm over with.
Yeah.
Okay? If you are a healthy individual, okay, if you have been eating well, nourishing yourself, you should be able to have that without major consequence. Mm-hmm. The problem becomes if you're somebody who is continually having these, okay, and you have high inflammation, you have a bunch of other chronic conditions that, this would be devastating for. Obviously you can't. Obviously you shouldn't is the word I should use. But yeah, if you're a relatively healthy individual, I would much rather just be like, listen, I had 16 cookies last night. It's just one of those nights. I'm like, You feel better? And he goes, yep. You know what?
Right.
Move on.
Yeah.
We're done.
Yeah.
Not, hey, I had to make 7 dozen Paleo pumpkin cookies because I needed a lot of them and I didn't want to eat the chocolate chip. Just go get your Chips Ahoy and be done with it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think, we're not, this is a harder thing to talk about, and when dealing with individuals' emotion. Like Colton said, we're not saying that making those healthier things or trying to use better ingredients, trying to pursue health through food. Really, there's just one thing to do: just eat real food. But yeah, like think about what are you trying to achieve here, and if you're just really wrestling with that, and you're like, I just want to eat something sweet, and then just do it and get over it.
Yeah, and like I said, I know we're beating this horse to death here, but that is one of the biggest things that I see a lot of people do is they make all these great things. It's super time consuming. Maybe you enjoy it, maybe you don't. But whenever I get a random food log and they tell me about, they write down all their food and it all looks great. And at the very end, I said I had 2 protein bars. And he said, well, what's in these protein bars? I'm like, oh, listen to this. I made this. And then they listed off all the ingredients, and I'm like, that's a 600 calorie bar. Like, you have to be cognizant to know that all of these good things that you make, regardless if it's, paleo and you use all the great stuff and it's still a carbohydrate ball of mess that you can't track, and there's a good chance that if you're consuming that or something like that each and every day and you're not changing, that's the problem.
Yeah. And a lot of that stems from how I think we have been raised and potentially, traditionally, generationally, just habits we've passed on. I know a lot of individuals, they have a reward system with food. And, I am not telling anyone what to do, how to raise their kids, but if you're trying to break that potential bondage or those chains, that's something that you're going to want to equip your kids with a different understanding. What is the relationship with food? Are we making this specific thing and trying to label it something that it's not really, just so we can consume it?
Yeah, 100%. So, I do think that as we kind of look at food, obviously how it's marketed, we can't just take for what it says on the label that because it's good, I can have more of it. Okay. Yeah. At the end of the day, a calorie is a calorie.
Yep.
Okay. And at the end of the day, there's still 4 calories per gram in protein. There's 4 calories per gram in carbs, and there's 9 calories per gram in fat. I recant my statement a little bit. When I talk about the protein balls and how people make it, it's more of a fat thing than it is a carb, really, because people are using coconut oil,
almond butter
by the spoonful.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, you got to imagine how many fat calories are in these things. At the end of the day, a calorie is a calorie.
Yeah, when I go over like a serving of fat, just for like a visual representation, it's like the end of your thumb, or like so if you're having 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of those things, like you just consumed your day amount in one sitting.
Yeah, so that is definitely one of the biggest things that we wanted to ring or hit on today is that, look, we have obviously want to encourage you to use the best ingredients when you make your food. We always want to encourage you to make your own food, but don't find yourself to be the person who's making a paleo dessert every day, every week, every other week. Like, use it for those special occasions. Like I credit my wife. I love her to death. She does make homemade ice cream. The only time we make it is for our kid's birthday.
Yep.
And that's the only time. I have not made it once. I got a great ice cream mixer.
Yeah.
I've never used it, but she makes it.
I'll borrow it.
Bryce really liked her ice cream too, didn't you, Bryce?
And
he said,
I will continue to stand
She's
on the soapbox in that individuals should earn their carbs.
Yeah, I still love that.
If you want to eat more carbs, do more work, go outside and do more manual labor, like do some hard physical stuff. Because if you really want those things, deserve it. But don't just have a horrible weekend or it's coming up on the weekend and, let's say like if we're having people over or we want to celebrate this specific thing, and I'm all about celebrating too, but just celebrate. Don't get caught up in that we always have to make something healthy so then we can do it every weekend now because we've labeled it as healthy. Just celebrate, move on.
Cracks me up because there was, I had, oh goodness, who was it? Had some either friends or family over, I'm not sure what it was, and we had dinner, and their kid said, "What's for dessert?" And I said, "Nothing."
Yeah.
So they looked at me like,
some blueberries.
Are you kidding me? Are you serious right now? Yeah. I'm very thankful that my kids think that raisins are the best thing in the world right now. I'm like, hey, you eat the rest of your vegetables, I'll give you some raisins. They're like, yes! And I'm like, oh, this is a great time to be alive. So, yeah, honestly, the labeling of dessert is, it is pretty catastrophic to our culture right now, because there's a lot of people, and think of any restaurant you've ever been to. What restaurant have you ever been to that doesn't sell dessert? Everywhere you go, that is where people will take advantage of you, because it has the sweet, it has the fat, it tickles the taste buds, and everybody will spend money on it. So that's the main thing that we wanted to do. Look, a dessert is still dessert regardless if it has the ingredients. Now, the only beneficial thing, in my opinion, is that one is going to be a lot less inflammatory than the other. But like I said, even your paleo desserts can be very high carb and high fat.
A whole nother podcast we should probably do at some point.
Write it down.
So many, I think many don't understand why they crave those kind of foods and why they honestly want to eat more of those processed and refined type things. And they're more like they lend themselves to those sweet type sugary whatever. It's very easy for your body to digest. There's not a lot of work that the body has to do, and that's more than likely because of the damage that's already been done. You can't handle a lot of dense type foods yet.
Yeah, it definitely. It's something that I've had plenty of conversations with my nutrition clients. Like, there are people who go from living the fast food life to starting to eat salads, and they see no change. And then they go right back to what they're doing because they saw no change. Well, here's the deal. So many trips to the fast food station for weeks or months or years maybe, it does a number on your gut lining. All the nooks and crannies, they're now soft, they're not rigid, and having that rigid and those contours are what's needed for your body to absorb nutrients once they become available. When you don't have those, you can eat the best stuff in the world, and it's going to go right through you, and that's going to be it. And there's going to be no change. And so the craving of that food continuously over and over again, look, your body is smarter than you will ever give it credit for. It knows that it didn't get any nutrients, so what's it going to say? Hey, bring me more. Bring me more food. I don't care what it is, but we got to get what we need. And so that's why it's easy to sit down and eat a bag of Doritos in one sitting. Because you're sitting there just crunching away, and your body's like, well, definitely not getting my protein, definitely not getting my good fat.
Another pandemic
keep it on coming
that our country is going through right now are the individuals who are extremely overfed yet malnourished.
Yes, that's a good one. Yeah, we're very overfed but malnourished, and we're very over-digestively taxed. Too many people don't let their digestive system have a break. That's why the dense food is so good. Usually when I look at food logs with people, the first thing I do is I go through the food log and I raise red flags. Not necessarily red flags that, oh, they had this or they had that. I'm getting a visual understanding of what their gut is, okay, just by looking at the food that you consume. Like, if they're not eating whole, dense food, if they're not getting any, good fiber or any kind of probiotic or fermented vegetables or anything like that that would support gut biome health, I already have a red flag, and that already tells me that inflammation is probably high. They probably have excess body fat to lose. Like, they're all very common to have and see together, and so that's the first thing that I look at, and then I look at, okay, well, if they have such a poor gut health, what is the total calories that they consume? And then you look at the amount of calories they consume, and it always seems like it's everywhere. It's up, it's down, it's even higher than the last time, and then it's down even lower, and it's just this huge mountainous up and down, like a 1,000+ calorie swing by the day, and we never know which one it's going to be. That tells me that there's gut health problems. And so when you have gut health problems, you're going to have that, like I said, that repeated signal to your hunger hormones, leptin and ghrelin, and that's going to tell you, hey, we need to eat. Hey, shut it down. Hey, got to eat again. We didn't get what we wanted. Shut it down. Like, it's a continuous, it's a grazing pattern. You don't really eat meals. You just never stop eating for any extended period of time. That's pretty accurate. I worded that. So, obviously we've hit and we've touched on different things, and we really kind of swung around on some different areas, but it all
really hate dessert.
I really don't like dessert, but I guiltily don't have that big of a sweet tooth. I'm more of a salt guy, which is its own problem in and of itself. Don't worry. But a lot of this topic all stems from what we see and what we are projected in the marketing of food to be good, better, or best, right? There's things to remember. Just because it's gluten-free doesn't mean it's healthy for you. Like I said, Twizzlers are gluten-free. All natural, there's actually a line in that sustainable documentary, and the guy says, cyanide is all natural. So does that make it good? According to a recent poll, local just means it has to be within one state or neighboring state.
Yeah, like even like for example, like a company like Green Bean Delivery. I mean, I think they can deliver from like a Midwest region, and they still will list and label it as like a local thing.
That's what I'm saying.
Again, I'm not saying that that's right or wrong, but just to understand.
Yeah, just to understand that there's a lot of loopholes in the marketing scheme, so people can get away with a lot. What are some other good ones? Gluten-free.
The whole organic, and like when individuals, when we talk about this, like a lot of times they'll be like, well, "What do you think about it?" And I'm like, "I think you should have as much of your own food on your own property that you're able." That's what I think. But if you can't, then talk to your neighbor, know your farmer, like have those kind of conversations.
Yeah. I think one that a lot of people that we take for granted, we don't talk about, is what low fat means. Low fat usually means low flavor, so there's something substituted with it, right?
High sugar.
High sugar, or something else that's going to make it taste better. That's probably a worse ingredient for you. So just because it's low fat does not mean it's good for you.
Right.
Low fat, low nourishment.
Like a chicken breast is low fat because it's just that way.
Yeah. But anyway, so where else do you want to go with this? You got anything else you really want to hit?
I think we shot some clay birds all over the place.
Yeah, I know we were kind of hitting a little bit everywhere. I definitely think that people should kind of obviously look at your lifestyle and the food that you tend to consume. Ask yourself if you're that person that's like, I got to have something sweet every day, and figure out why. Okay. Most of the time it's going to come from you not having enough dense calories in a given day, right? Now, there's, like I said, it'd probably be best to do a podcast on that, because you can talk about cortisol in the evening and how it's not leveled out to the point where people always crave something at night before they go to bed. Yeah. It's the whole reason they're actually able to sleep. So we could get into that. And I know we've talked about it a little bit before, but it's, you got to identify these things. You got to see that, okay, I am, this dessert person. Why am I the way that I am, essentially, and how do I move around it? Because even though that I've realized that the ingredients in that Dairy Queen Blizzard, is not great, my homemade one sucks, but I'll eat them 3 times as more. It's gonna lead to overconsumption, and if you're overconsuming, it becomes very hard to lose body fat or weight in general.
Sorry, keep going on here, but that's a huge point. Like, I like Haagen-Dazs because when I eat it, I'm like, I got what I needed out of that, and I'm done, for however many days or weeks. But if I make it, it's
hit like that nerve, I'm good.
That would kind of like it. I mean, it clawed at the surface of what I was after, but it didn't really give me what I needed.
And here's the other thing. And now I made this much, and I got to eat it. Right. That's where a lot of people don't realize. It's like, you go to the drive. I can't believe we're even suggesting this. Like, if you go to the drive-thru and get you a Dairy Queen and you get you a small one, like, that's all they give you. That's it. That's as much they give you. But if you're like, I'm gonna make ice cream tonight. You could make 5 gallons in a hurry.
Right. So I guess the big point here is to have an understanding of self-control and just knowing who you are and why you have specific, whether they be cravings, and then a relationship with food, and then how to work with that if you even desire to change it. Yeah,
for sure. So I think that you can take this and you can apply this to any area of your nutritional life. What are you an overconsumer in? Are you overconsumer in and let's think of a good thing. You can be an overconsumer in protein shakes.
Right.
Look, you need to consume protein in its purest form, because your gut needs that workout. It needs to be producing enzymes. To get all of your protein through shakes is a bad idea.
Right.
They're great in a pinch. It is not meant to essentially be the foundation of your protein consumption. Right. But like, you think of other things that you consume. It could be, maybe it's chips. Okay, some people are like, I love tortilla chips, but I only eat blue corn chips. Guilty, raising my hand. Okay, here's the thing: I can overconsume 3 bags of that stuff in a sitting if I needed to. But it has its own problem. Okay, just because it is a better ingredient, just because it is a better quality, it does not mean that it's up for grabs. It's like this mythical food that I can just eat all that I want, and I'm going to feel great, and my body fat's going to go away. Right. It doesn't work that way. So look at anything that you consume. What's your vice? What are the things that you're not willing to give up? You found a healthy alternative, but now you won't give that up. Yeah. Right? That's a big one. I think that's about all I got. We can shut it down on that one.
I think we're good. We beat it up.
Yeah, we lay this horse to rest now. So, I think maybe next podcast that we do, we might actually touch on that a little bit. Not so much on the food, the labeling of it, and the emotional attention that you get from seeing advertisements and businesses relying on your emotional investment into their product, but we can talk about why you choose to be persuaded by that. Okay. Right. And that'll be, a little bit more in depth, probably physiologically than anything else. So if you like physiology and hormone stuff, you probably hop into that next one.
Cool.
But we'll see. Not a bad podcast, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed this one. Until next time, this is the Silver Bullet Podcast.